There are plenty of myths and misconceptions about cats. Many myths are believed to be factually true by cat owners, which has its effect on our cats. For example, did you know cats should not drink milk? Or do you assume when it's purring that your cat is happy? Well, we will tell you 12 common myths you need to stop believing right away. Number 12. Cats are not affectionate. Though cats are often thought of as aloof, they can actually be quite affectionate. However, they typically show their love in different ways than dogs or humans do. For example, cats may purr when they're content or happy, but they also purr when they're injured or in pain. They may not always be vocal about their feelings, but that doesn't mean cats don't have them. In fact, cats form strong bonds with their caregivers and can even grieve when they lose a human companion. So if you think your cat doesn't care about you, think again. They may not show it in the same way as a dog does, but that doesn't mean the love isn't there. Number 11. Cats can survive on a vegan diet. Cats are obligate carnivores, which means that they require animal protein to survive. Meat contains specific nutrients your cat strives for. Quite a high chance that if you offer your feline friend vegetables, that it refuses it. Their digestion system is simply not made for this type of food. So, focus on providing your cat meat. Number 10. Milk is healthy for cats. Most cats are lactose intolerant, which means that they cannot properly digest milk. Milk can cause stomach upset and diarrhea for cats. In addition, milk is high in fat and calories, which can contribute to weight gain. While some cats may be able to tolerate small amounts of milk without any problems, it is generally best to avoid giving milk to cats. If your cat is really craving milk, there are specially formulated lactose-free cat milks that are available and are safe for them to drink. Number 9. All cats hate water. While it is true that many cats don't enjoy taking a dip in the pool, there are plenty of felines out there who love nothing more than a good old splash around. So why do people believe that all cats hate water? Well, it could be because of their natural aversion to getting wet. Cats have a very dense fur, which means that they can get cold and wet very easily. In the wild, getting wet can also mean being more vulnerable to predators. However, just because cats don't like getting wet doesn't mean they all hate water. Some breeds, such as the Bengal, are actually quite fond of swimming and playing in water. Number 8. Cats cannot be trained. To start with, cats are very different from dogs. However, that does not mean you cannot teach them anything. Cats learn primarily through positive reinforcement, such as treats or petting. If you want to train your cat to do a specific behavior, you will need to reward them whenever they do it. It is important to keep in mind that cats have a very short attention span, so you will need to be patient and consistent with your training. In addition, some behaviors are simply instinctual for cats and cannot be trained out of them, such as hunting behavior or sometimes scratching the furniture. Hey, want to find out how to teach a cat tricks? Check out the video we made about that in the upper corner. Number 7. Cats only eat when they are hungry. This one is straight up not true. Domestic cats have evolved to become much more efficient at digesting their food, so they don't need to eat as often as their wild ancestors. However, this does not mean that they can go without food for long periods of time and that they will only eat when hungry. If you would provide it with treats after they had their regular food, it might even continue eating without being hungry. It is important here to keep track of its weight to prevent it from eating too much. Number 6. Cats like being left alone. It is quite misunderstood that cats like being left alone. In reality, cats are social creatures that thrive on companionship. When left alone, cats can become bored and even depressed. Cats need stimulation and interaction to stay happy and healthy. That's why it's important to provide your cat with plenty of toys and playtime. If you're going to be away from home for an extended period of time, consider hiring a pet sitter to keep your cat company. Number 5. Cats are low maintenance. Compared to dogs, yes, cats are relatively low in maintenance. However, this does not mean that they don't require any care. Cats need to be fed and watered regularly, have a clean litter box, and should also get regular vet checkups. Depending on whether your cat can go outside or not, you should also make them exercise by playing with them regularly. A good rule of thumb is to provide your cat with 2 to 3 10-minute play sessions per day. Number 4. Pregnant women are unsafe around cats. One of the biggest myths about cats is that they are unsafe around pregnant women. This couldn't be further from the truth though. Cats are actually very gentle and loving creatures, and they have even been known to help comfort and calm pregnant women during labor. So why is this myth so pervasive? Unfortunately, it's likely due to a misunderstanding of toxoplasmosis, a disease that can be harmful to pregnant women and their developing babies. Toxoplasmosis is caused by a parasite that is commonly found in cat feces. However, it's important to note that this parasite is not harmful to cats themselves. As long as you do not touch the poop, keep the cat indoors, and let someone else change the litter box, you should be good. Number 3. Indoor cats don't get sick. There's a common misconception that indoor cats don't get sick while outdoor cats do. This simply isn't true. All cats, regardless of whether they live indoors or outdoors, are susceptible to illness and disease. Indoor cats can contract illnesses from other living beings in the home, such as dogs and humans. They can also pick up diseases from contaminated food or water. Outdoor cats have a higher risk of exposure to parasites, toxins, and other harmful substances. They're also more likely to be injured or killed by cars, predators, or other dangers. So, while indoor cats may not get sick as often as outdoor cats, they're not immune to illness and disease. If you suspect your cat is sick, take them to the vet immediately for diagnosis and treatment. Number 2. Cats don't like dogs. Cats and dogs have been known to be natural enemies, but that doesn't mean that every cat hates every dog. In fact, many cats are quite fond of their canine friends. However, there are some cats who don't like dogs, and there are a few reasons why. One reason why some cats don't like dogs is because they're afraid of them. Dogs are much larger than cats, and they can be very intimidating. When a cat feels scared or threatened by a dog, it's only natural for them to want to stay away from them. Another reason why some cats don't like dogs is because they simply don't like the way they smell. Dogs have a very distinct odor that some cats find unpleasant. This isn't necessarily the case with all cats, but it's definitely something that can keep them away from dogs. Lastly, some cats simply don't like the way dogs behave. Dogs tend to be very active and playful, which can be overwhelming for a lot of cats. If a cat prefers to lounge around and take things slow, then it might not enjoy having a dog around. Number 1. Cats always land safely on their feet when they fall. One of the most persistent myths about cats is that they always land on their feet when they fall. However, this is not always the case. While it is true that cats have an innate ability to right themselves mid-air and land safely on their feet more often than not, there are exceptions to this rule. If a cat falls from a great height or at an awkward angle, they can sustain serious injuries. So, why do people believe this myth? It is likely because cats are very good at hiding their injuries. They are natural survivors and will often walk away from a fall seemingly unscathed. But just because a cat doesn't show signs of pain or injury, doesn't mean they haven't been hurt. If you think your cat has fallen and may be injured, it's best to take them to the vet for a checkup. Hey you, is there any myth we missed? Then please tell us by dropping it in the comments down below. Oh, and also please consider subscribing as it really helps our channel grow. Thanks again for watching another Surfing Cat video, and we hope to see you in the next one.